welcome back for another video. Today I'm going to show you how to paint a fall scene with birch trees using watercolors. So let's jump right in. Okay, so I have my Arches watercolor paper and I taped off the borders with some low tack painter's tape. I usually don't like to paint all the way to the edge of my page, but that's total preference. If you do paint all the way to the edge of your page, you're going to want to tape it down onto your surface so that your paper doesn't buckle as it gets wet. I've got my watercolor, Winsor Newton watercolors. I've got my water, my paper towel. I've got some Grumbacher brushes here, a size 10, a 5, and a 0. And I've got a number 2 pencil. And also I'm gonna be showing you today how to use liquid Frisket. So we're gonna be using some of that in here. So if you wanna grab a brush that you don't really care about, because you're gonna be using a brush to put this on, they do give you this little tool that I'll show you. Sometimes when you buy the liquid Frisket, they do give you this little tool here to apply it and take it off, but I don't really like it. I usually use a brush that I don't really care about. So that's up to you, whatever you want to use. So we're going to start by slowly sketching, lightly sketching our hill that our trees are going to be on. So I'm just going to start from one side to the other. And I'm going to have these birch trees kind of bleeding off my page. So just lightly sketch where you want them. We're not going to be sketching all the birch trees, just maybe some of the bigger ones, the thicker ones. And then you can have them all different thicknesses. And I'll put in a few over here. And you can just have them coming down to wherever you want on the hill. And then maybe a thinner one here. And if you want to skip this step, you can totally do that. You're just going to put down Frisket, cover up these trees with some Frisket, just so that Frisket is kind of like it's a protective coating so that it leaves the white of your paper white, so you can paint right over it. And when you're done with it, you can go over it with like, these are those little erasers to take rubber cement off your page when you use rubber cement, but you can use it for Frisket as well. So I'm going to show you how to use that to take your Frisket off in a minute. Okay, and let me pop in one more tree here. All right. Okay, not sure you can see that, but I have my hill and some of my trees. Not all of my trees, but some of them. Okay, so at this point, you're going to want to open up your Frisket. And it kind of has a little bit of an odor to it. And it's kind of this like creamy color here. It's liquidy. And like I said, take a brush that you do not care about. And I'm going to just turn my page sideways because it's easier for me to go from left to right rather than up and down. And you're going to want to apply this wherever you want your paper to stay white. So give it a nice good coat. And then just kind of end it wherever your tree ends on the hill. And then all my trees, like I said before, all my trees are going to be going to the edge, to the top of my page. And you can already feel that the brush is starting to turn hard on you. So definitely use a brush that you do not care about, because you will never get that brush back to what it was. Try and stay in your lines, and if you don't, no big deal. Sometimes people take this too seriously. You're just supposed to be having fun with it. I've been painting since I was a little girl. And you know what? You just have to have fun with it. Why do it if you're going to be so serious about it? It's supposed to be therapeutic and relaxing, and you're supposed to enjoy it. A lot of people just take it way too seriously, and then they don't have fun and they give up because their result is not turning out the way they wanted it to. Well, my results don't always turn out the way I want them to either, but you just kind of have to go with the flow and accept what turned out. All right, we're almost done here. Whenever I teach classes, I always make sure everyone's having a good time, Because if they're not having a good time, then why do it? No one wants to do something that they're not having fun at. All right, so I'm gonna give this, normally you would just let this dry completely, but for the sake of the video, I am going to blow dry this. Some of these areas that I have a little bit heavier, that I put the Frisket on a little bit heavier, they're taking a little bit longer to dry, obviously, because they're a little bit wetter. But it's gonna have the consistency of rubber cement. It's gonna kind of look like it as well. It's gonna be tacky. So that's, when it's tacky, that's when you can start painting over it. Okay, so I am going to start with my hill first. So I'm gonna put a wash, just some water over. And like I said, you can go right over the Frisket. That's why it's there, to protect so those trees stay nice and white. And if I don't tell you exactly which colors I am using, and I forget to mention what color I'm using, I will put it down in the description. So if you want to use some of the same colors that I'm using, you'll know what I am. And again, they're Winsor Newton watercolors. Okay, so I am gonna take, actually let me open these up. Okay, so I've got my little travel set here of my Winsor Newton, but I also have a whole palette of them as well, so I switch back and forth. Oh, and this is a metal butcher tin. I don't know, I think they've used these, I don't know, in the deli or something. I'm not really sure where they use these, but these are really nice to have. My teacher in college ended up gifting this to me, so I've had this for many, many years. Okay, and it's metal, so it's enamel actually, so it's nice, and you can blend your colors nicely on here. Okay, so I'm gonna be taking a little bit of my SAP Green, getting it all nice and wet. And I am also going to throw in a little bit of my Viridian Green. Get some water on there. All right. And you're going to kind of want to start thinking about where your light source is coming from, whether it be the sun or the moon. So right now my light source is going to be coming from behind, so my shadows of my trees are going to be coming down this way. And you can start blending different colors in here if you want to. I might add a little bit of blue in here, just to give it some shadowing. One mistake people make is when they want to shadow something, they end up shadowing it with Payne's gray or any kind of gray and or a black. And you don't always need to shadow it with a black or a gray. Sometimes when you use different colors, like in this case, I am using blue. Which blue is this? I'll let you know. This is Ultramarine. So in this case, I'm using Ultramarine Blue, and see how nicely it's starting to shadow my hill. So you don't always need to use Payne's gray or black to shadow something. Throw a little more of my green. Now, since I want my light to be coming from this way, I am going to lighten up my hill and brighten it up a little bit more on this side. So that's why you want to kind of keep in mind where your shadows are going to be. I'm also going to be using a little bit of Cad Yellow in here, just to brighten this up a little bit. And I'm starting out by using my 10. I don't know if I mentioned that, but it's my size 10 brush. Okay. That looks good. I'm gonna a little bit more of the blue over here. I think I'm going to, it's gonna be a sunny day, so I think I'm gonna add a bunch of like the yellow trees, because I know birch trees turn nice and yellow. So I'm gonna be doing some oranges and yellows in here. All right, before I do that, I am going to give this another dry, just so that my leaves and my hill don't blend together. All right, so it's still a little damp, but I think it'll be just fine. Okay, so for my trees, I'm gonna be doing, like I said, oranges and yellow. So I'm gonna take a little bit of my Cad Yellow, and actually let me get a little Cad Yellow going on my palette. Okay, and then you're gonna wanna blot this in because it's supposed to be kind of like textured leaves. So you do want some of the white showing through right at this point, because when you go and put your other colors down, sometimes you want the brightness of those colors to show through. You don't want everything mixing together. So I'm gonna do this like you can't see through the trees, like a forest. So I'm not even gonna have any sky showing in this painting. And down here I had done a wash, a wet wash so that my colors would blend nicely together. Up here, I did not wet my paper. I want everything to not blend at this point. So I'm gonna throw in some yellows. Then I'm gonna go in with a little bit of my Cad Pale Red. Get a little bit of that. I'll mix it in with my Cadmium Yellow. I'll add a little bit of that here and there. I love when I make these videos and my dogs are in the background. I know I've mentioned this in my other videos, but I've got 4 dogs, and one is always making some kind of noise. So one of them is having a coughing fit right now in the background. I don't know if you can hear that. So I apologize. The joys of having 4 dogs. All right, so I'm kind of putting in my orange, kind of in between where my yellows are. I am going over some of my yellow, but I'm not going over all of them. And try not to get on your, if you get a little bit on your hill, that's fine. We're gonna be popping in some leaves later, but try to just kind of not get too much on there at this point. A little bit more of my yellow, brighten up some of those tones. Pine trees and birch trees are my 2 favorite trees. So I love when I'm painting pine trees and birch trees. All right, I'm gonna add in a little bit of green because maybe there's a little green still left on the trees. So I'm putting in a little bit of my SAP Green here and there. At this point, my leaves are pretty wet, so they will start blending together. So you can put in a little green here and there. Usually the top of the trees change first, so most of your green might be towards the bottom, but it doesn't have to be. And I'm just kind of pouncing my brush. And I'm pouncing it on an angle, not on the tip. You don't want to ruin your tip, so never pounce on the tip of your brush. Always pounce on an angle. And on the Arches watercolor paper, it blends so nicely. This is really nice quality paper. I usually use Arches watercolor paper when I want something to blend beautifully. But if I don't want the colors to blend that much, I usually end up using my Canson watercolor paper. Because the colors, kind of where you put them is where they stay. But if you want something to really blend, I recommend the Arches watercolor paper. All right, so let me get some of my colors a little bit brighter in here. I lost a little bit of my oranges. And it's okay if you go straight from the paint to your paper. You don't always need to put it on your palette first. Sometimes if you feel like you have too much paint on your brush, I dab it off on my palette first. But if you want something to be a little bit brighter, a little bit more saturated. Sometimes I just go straight from the paint to the paper. I remember growing up as a kid, we lived in this one house that had a beautiful birch tree right outside my bedroom window, and it would always turn yellow in the fall. It was gorgeous. Although my dad didn't like that tree too much because the roots of it got tangled around some of the pipes, and it caused us to have some flooding in our basement. So I remember he didn't like that tree, but I sure did. I'm gonna put a little bit more of my yellow in here. And right now I've kind of got it in a line like yellow, orange, green. If you wanna mix that up a little bit and you don't wanna be as predictable as that, definitely do that. Throw a little green up in here. Make it a little bit more unpredictable. Otherwise it starts looking like a line, like lines of color, and unless that's the look you're going for. I've seen some beautiful trees all lined up where they're all changing at the same time. So they are perfectly like red, orange, yellow. It's like all in a line. It's beautiful. All right, I am going to put in a little bit more green down here. And actually I'm gonna pop in a little bit of my Viridian Green down here too. And I'll bring it up a little bit. Try not to go on my hill. All right, I am going to throw in a little bit of my Ultramarine Blue again on this side. I got a little too dark on this side, and that's where my light source is coming from. So I'm gonna pop in a little bit of blue on this side, just so like it's shadowed over here a little bit more. I know there's no blue leaves, but it'll end up looking like shadows. All right, and you can bring that up as much as you want. All right, I'm gonna leave my leaves alone a little bit. I'm gonna go back to my hill. But first I'm gonna give it another little dry just so my leaves and my hill don't blend together. Okay, so I'm gonna take some of my Ultramarine Blue again and kind of go over this part. And I didn't saturate my page, my hill again, like I did the first time. I'm just going in straight with paint. My brush is pretty saturated, but my paper's not. And you want it a little splotchy. So right now, see how it looks like the sun is coming from this way? Because this is nice, light and airy, and this is a little bit darker and deeper. That's the effect I'm trying to go for. I'll pop in a little bit of my Viridian Green over here. And I can have it go up into my leaves a little bit. And we're going to be shadowing the trees in a second anyway, so that's going to really enhance where our light is coming from. But before you do that, you should kind of know where your light is coming from without making shadows first, if that makes sense. So I've kind of got my basics here, so you know that this is a darker side. This is more of the shadowed side. Once you pop in your shadows of the trees, you will definitely know where the sun is coming from. But before you make your shadows, you should kind of know where it's, you know, that it looks like one side is a little bit more shadowed than the other. All right, and I like that this is nice and light down here. I'm gonna leave that alone. I'm going to pop in a little bit more of my Viridian Green and my Ultramarine Blue. And this would have been a little bit, if I would have popped in my Payne's gray or my black instead of my Ultramarine blue down here, it would have given the painting a whole different feel. I feel like instead of using Payne's gray, which I am a fan of Payne's gray, don't get me wrong, I love using it, and I will use a lot of it in this painting towards the end. But if you don't use it and you shadow with different colors, complementary colors, it really brightens up your painting. Okay, we are gonna go in now with our shadows. Okay, so I'm gonna be using a little bit of my Payne's gray and Ultramarine blue to make the shadows. So I'm gonna take a little of that, a little of my Ultramarine blue, make this nice deep midnight blue color. And so since our sun is coming from this direction, our shadows are gonna be going down towards the left. So you don't have to make them look like stripes. I mean, they will end up looking like stripes because that's just the way the shadow is. But you want them to be kind of, since this is a ground, they're gonna be kind of broken up and a little bit, what am I trying to say? Not such a straight line. It's gonna be a little bit like roughed up a little bit. If this was a shadow on a nice, like solid surface, like a table or something, yeah, your shadows will be crisp and straight and clean. But this is a hill, so you have to kind of think about where you want your, what surface your shadows are on. So since this is a hill and there's all sorts of stones and grass and dirt, it's gonna be a little bit more bumpy. Okay. And you're gonna wanna make the thickness of your shadows the thickness of your trees, or a little bit thinner. So kind of mimic the size of your tree. That looks good. Okay. And I'm just using, when I'm outlining, I'm just using the very tip of my brush. Now my paper over here is still wet from when I put down that last bit of ultramarine blue, so it is bleeding a little bit. It's not as crisp as it is over here. I'm not sure if you can see that. It is blending in a little bit. And that's okay. That's all right. I'm gonna go ahead and dry my shadows really quick. I'm gonna go and mix up a little bit more of my color. Oops. All right, and I'm gonna darken up some of my shadows. And I realize I forgot to shadow my very first tree, so I will do that in a second. Okay. And at the end, with some white ink, if you want to add in some really thin, like little branches, or maybe a couple like really thin little trees in the background, we could do that later with some white ink. And I'll show you how to do that as well. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and dry my shadows, and I'm gonna start on my trees. I'm gonna show you how to take off the frisket. All right. right, so at this point, I am going to deepen up my hill a little bit before I take off the frisket. As I was drying it, I was looking at it, and I'd like to deepen up my hill a little bit over here, and maybe kind of blend in some of these shadows over here. So I'm just taking a little bit of my Payne's gray and my Ultramarine blue. And I'm just deepening up some of my areas on this side of the painting. I think I'm going to use a little bit of my SAP Green over here. A little bit more of the SAP Green on my leaves over here. So make sure you get all your finishing touches done before you take off that frisket, because then you're going to try and, if you take off your frisket too early, it's going to be a pain in the butt trying to get around all those trees with these leaves. So just make sure that your leaves are deepened up enough before you take off your frisket. I think I'm going to put a little bit of my Ultramarine blue up here too. All right, looks pretty good. I'm going to add a little bit more of my yellow down here. This is my Cadmium Yellow. A little too bright. Let me take some of that off. Add a little bit more of my green. I'm going to dab that off. It's a little too bright. There we go. I lost some of that light color that I really liked before. So just with a paper towel, a dry paper towel, going in over it and taking some of it off. All right, good. All right, so make sure everything's dry. I'm going to dry it one more time before I take off my frisket. Now I've got this little, I don't know what this is. It's like a little rubber thing that takes off rubber cement, but it's really good for frisket as well. Oops, and I dripped a little bit of water on my page. There. Okay, so what you're going to want to do is you're going to take, I usually use the corner, and slowly hold your paper down firmly, and it starts taking it off without ripping your paper. And it's a little gooey, kind of like rubber cement, that it balls up into like this little rubber ball. So when you feel like you've got too much on the end here of your little eraser thing, then just pick it off the corner and start again. And you just kind of have to work at it. Especially where you've got it on a little bit thicker, it's a little bit harder to come off. So it will take a little bit of time, but it works, and it does the job. See how nice and white my tree is still? Make sure you get it all off. So you just want to kind of rub with your finger to see if you've got a little bit still on there somewhere. Because if it's still on there and you go to paint your tree, it won't absorb the paint, obviously. And we're gonna be putting, like the birch trees have those little black lines on them, those little gray and black lines. So we're gonna go ahead and paint up our birch trees in a second. So now our trees look nice and white. So we're gonna go in with a very tiny brush. I'm gonna go in with a 00 size brush, and I'm gonna use some Payne's gray. And we're gonna be making the little lines on our birch tree. So I'm gonna take a little Payne's gray, and you do not want to wet your trees at this point, because you want these lines to stay nice and crisp right now. So you're gonna come in and you're just gonna make little lines, little wavy thin lines, like that. And we're gonna be shadowing our trees on this side in a second anyways. So I'll show you. So with the same brush, you can go in on the left side of the tree. If your sun is on the right side, so your shadow of the tree is gonna be on the same side that your shadows are going on the hill. Okay, so now that you did your first layer of those lines, you can go in. If you want to deepen up any of your areas, you can go in and deepen them up a little bit. And I'm just deepening up my shadow more towards the base of the tree and the left side. And it's still with the Payne's gray. And you can still use a little bit of that Ultramarine Blue if you want. You can have the shadow kind of coming up from the base of the tree and working its way up a little bit. So it gives the tree that nice rough texture of the bark. So you can kind of come in with a little bit of a dry brush if you want to and give it that texture. All right, and I am going to deepen up my bases of the tree just a little bit more. I'm taking my Payne's Gray and my Ultramarine Blue again, and I'm just dabbing the bottom of my trees. There. Okay, so if you want to go in and deepen up some of your lines, you can. Actually, I see that this tree needs a little bit more. All right. Okay. Then, where's my white ink? I want to show you, I'm just using Dr. Martin's white ink. And with my size 00 brush, I'm going to be going in and making some little branches and maybe some smaller, thinner trees in the back. So, because right now the painting looks great like that, but you just want to add a little bit more detail. I'm not even sure you're going to be able to see this. It's just little branches. And if you wanted to, you could have used Frisket for this too and made little lines, but I feel that this gets it a little bit crisper than the Frisket. Sometimes the Frisket gets a little messy. So if you want some really crisp little lines, I wouldn't call it cheating, but you can go over and use a little bit of the ink. Sometimes it's nice just to have that extra little detail. And when you're making your branches, you want to make sure that your branches, if they're touching the trunk of the tree, that they're a little bit thicker towards the trunk of the tree, and then they bleed off your page. They just kind of pick up your brush a little bit and they'll just kind of bleed right off. So they get nice and thin towards the end. And if you want to go in with a little bit of Payne's Gray and shadow some of these up too, you can totally do that as well, if you don't like them all white. But of course, wait till the ink is dry, then you can do that. I'm going to bring some branches a little bit lower. And if you want to throw in a couple trees in the back also, like some thinner trees, you could do that as well, but I'm going to choose not to. So I think I am about done. And there it is. Oh, let's take off the tape and see what it looks like. Sometimes that blue on the tape just plays with your eyes. So let's slowly take it off so we don't rip our paper. But again, I'm using low tack painter's tape. Slowly peel it off. There. And there you go. Thank you all for watching this video. I hope you liked it and learned a little something. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more up-to-date videos. And I'm also a furniture painter, so you will see some furniture painting videos on this channel as well. You can follow me on Facebook and Instagram for even more. Have a great day. Bye.